Families want to help their loved ones suffering from addiction, but they often struggle to move past newfound roles and routines after their loved one gets sober. So, families must understand how the relationship and roles within the family change when a loved one suffers from addiction and what happens during the recovery and after recovery. Here's an example. Tom is an 11-year-old boy living with a severely alcoholic father. Even at a young age, Tom knew his job was to monitor his father's condition when he returned home from work. Tom knew he had just a few seconds to decide what to do with his younger siblings when Dad walked through the door. If Dad was highly intoxicated, Tom knew he had to take his siblings to his neighbors to avoid anger, aggression, or violence. If Dad was moderately intoxicated, Tom knew he could take his siblings upstairs to play quietly so Dad would leave them alone. If Dad was sober, Tom knew they could remain in the living room without consequence. Interestingly, Tom never discussed this adopted decision making role with his mother as he knew she had her own new roles and jobs to do when Dad came home. Does this split second analysis and evaluation, or hypervigilance, magically disappear if Dad goes to treatment? The answer is probably not. Loved ones must understand these hypervigilant roles they take on is actually less about their loved one's impairment and more about their own need to self protect and prepare for a possible relapse. As the addiction continues, families adjust to new rules, roles, routines, rituals, and relationships in their daily life. These changes move from a prevention process to an interactional one aimed to live safely with a loved one's active addiction. The longer these new roles last, the harder it is to initiate change. There is hope, though, and it's why Dr. Michael Barnes' new book, When the Solution Becomes the Problem, focuses on treating the family as much as treating the family member suffering from addiction. Why? Because Tom's story causes a lot of trauma in the family, and the separation of trauma and addiction, especially when families go to great lengths to avoid feeling the effects of the trauma. Understanding where the new normal of rules, roles, routines, rituals, and relationships come from is an important step for families to heal. Assuming that things will just be fixed or back to normal when the loved one returns from treatment is not effective, and more than likely the family will just maintain the same newfound hypervigilant behaviors they developed during the active addiction. Like other chronic diseases, treatment for addiction aims to teach each client and their family how to live with an illness that will never entirely disappear. Healing requires acceptance of this fact by all family members. Families heal by building a foundation of belief that the disease impacts every family member. The individual with the chronic illness and family members will need to accept personal responsibility, realistic expectations, a healthy lifestyle, daily effort to acknowledge the presence of the disease, and respect for possible relapse. If you want to learn more about family involvement and healing during and after addiction, check out When the Solution Becomes the Problem, a new book by Dr. Michael Barnes, renowned addiction expert and traumatologist.